What's going on, man? Welcome back to the basement. I'm Ron, and you guys keep asking me in the comments, Ron, when are we going to see some Dynasty content? When are you going to do a Dynasty video? We want Dynasty. We're getting deeper into the season. It's week 11, which means we're going to start easing into the Dynasty space. Do not worry. As we keep going on, we'll get more and more Dynasty content, and then literally from NFL playoffs, right, as soon as week 17 wraps up, through the NFL Combine, through the NFL Draft, we will be doing nothing but Dynasty content on this channel. So if you are one of those guys that loves Dynasty, stay patient. But I have a nice treat for you guys today. I know it's deadline week or deadline season, right? We're getting towards the trade deadline in these Dynasty leagues, which means it's time to wheel and deal. If you are a team that is out of contention, you need to strip things down, get ready for a rebuild or a one-year turnaround. And if you are contending, it's time to push the chips in the middle. So we are going to break down our Dynasty must buy and sells today. We'll go through 3 trade targets, 2 players that you should be selling in Dynasty leagues. With that being said, let's not waste any more time. If you enjoyed the video, make sure down below, subscribe, leave a like. Let's go.
Thirsty, trying to choose. I know I'm pretty cool. My nitty bag.
Now, yes, it is deadline season, so that's why we're making this video, but we also have my Patreon Dynasty rankings fresh off the press for you guys, which means everything that I have is, fresh in my mind and as up to date as possible in terms of the current trade market. Now, my Dynasty rankings on patreon.com/Ron Stewart. You can find the link in the description, find the link down below in the comments. Every month I come out here, I update a complete top 250 Superflex tight end premium rankings. And for each position I go through, I give you guys what tier I have them in, what ranking they are, what they changed since the last time I did these rankings. So Drake London here has fallen 4 spots. Tyreek Hill has gone up 4 spots. You have my prospect tier. So that is my prospect grade. My prospect model spits out a tier, a grade for each player. You get to see all of them in here. Archetype is just the size of the receiver. And then buy and sell, that's the important part, what we're going to get into today. I have hard buys, soft buys, hard sell, soft sell, just pretty much how much urgency you should be making these trades with, you can see on these charts. Now, I also want to say I was at a Seton Hall basketball game last night. The voice is a little bit hoarse. We were, screaming our heads off. Sadly, they lost to Iowa. So, if you hear my voice go out or if I cough, that's just what we're on today. So let's talk about some trade targets. We have our first buy here, and it is the golden boy himself, the prince who was promised, Trevor Lawrence. And he is a hard buy for me. I have him ranked as my 205 in Dynasty, as my QB 10 on Keep Trade Cut. That's what we're going to use for today. We don't have ADP right now because nobody's doing startup drafts. All we have is Keep Trade Cut, which I know is flawed, but again, it's all we got right now. They have him as the 308 as the QB 11. So I'm about like a round and a few picks higher than consensus. And I think that this is the perfect time to go out and buy a Trevor Lawrence because I think in season, we kind of stray away from the idea of how valuable quarterbacks really are in Superflex leagues. In the offseason, you have to move mountains if you wanted to get into like last offseason. If you wanted to get into the Burrows, the Herberts, the Josh Allens, the Mahomes, of course, the Lamar Jacksons, the Kylers, even like Dax, you're going to have to pay an arm and a leg. And I think in season, you can kind of buy these guys for a little bit cheaper, especially a guy like Trevor Lawrence, because he isn't really scoring difference-making fantasy points, and he's not valued as like a top 6 untouchable quarterback just yet. But I think we're going to look back at what he's done this season, and as a Dynasty community, we're going to just sort of send him on this trajectory of, okay, he's actually back on track here of what we were promised as a prospect. So we should probably be putting that respect on his name, putting him into the top, 8 quarterbacks in Dynasty conversation. So I think the time to buy is now, especially if he's on like a contending team and maybe you have a more win-now oriented quarterback you can sort of flip for him. I think now would be the time to buy, especially if you are a rebuilding team. Now with Trevor Lawrence, I think people really forget how hyped he was coming into the league. He was hyped up as the next Peyton Manning, the next Andrew Luck. He was a first overall pick in the NFL draft. He was a guy where we're all talking about Bijan Robinson, hyping up Bijan Robinson. Go get your 23 first. Go get Bijan Robinson. Imagine Bijan Robinson, but imagine Bijan Robinson at the most valuable position in Superflex Dynasty, a quarterback, Trevor Lawrence. I've seen startups where he was going like 109, 110 when he was a rookie, 107 when he was a rookie. He was that guy. And I don't think that was wrong. He was a really, really strong rookie prospect. This is my prospect model where it spits out a grade from 1 through 10 on, just based on their production, athleticism, where they were drafted. And Trevor Lawrence is one of 3 quarterbacks in my database to ever get a 9+ RS grade. It is Trevor Lawrence, it is Cam Newton, it is Joe Burrow. Those are the guys. He is really, really good. And I think that he's rebounded very nicely this year. I think it's kind of gone a little bit under the radar just because he's like the QB 13 in points per game, 16.7 points per game. He's not lighting the world on fire by any means, but I think he's back on track to where we wanted him to be from when we drafted him. And if we look at him side by side with Andrew Luck here, now by no means am I saying that he is Andrew Luck or is going to be as good as Andrew Luck, but I think the context is important. So this is a tweet here where I looked through the first 10 games of their second seasons and compared them side by side, and they are comparable. Passing yards, 2340 to 2430, passing touchdowns, 13 to 14, interceptions, same amount. Trevor Lawrence has a better completion percentage at 65% to Andrew Luck's 59%. Yards per attempt, Andrew Luck beats him out 7 to 6.7, but very close. EPA per play, which again is just kind of like offensive efficiency on a per play basis. You have Andrew Luck at 0.121, Trevor Lawrence at 0.1. Completion percentage over expectation. So based on your ADOT and your completion percentage, what are you kind of doing above what you're expected? Trevor Lawrence is exceeding that by like 0.4%. They're both like right in that area. Andrew Luck is minus 1.8%. Andrew Luck, just in terms of like his archetype, below 60% completion, but he pushed the ball downfield and made plays. That's kind of why his yards per attempt is better, but his completion percentage is down. And when we're talking about fantasy, we care about rushing. Andrew Luck was a guy coming into the league that had like similar 40 times and similar metrics to a guy like Cam Newton. He was like the same size. He ran like I think he ran like a 4.6 flat or like a 4.59. He was super, super athletic. He didn't rush as much as a Cam Newton or a Lamar Jackson or any of those type of guys, but he gave you enough on the ground to really raise that ceiling. Trevor Lawrence has shown that so far, 3.7 rush attempts per game to Andrew Luck's 4.1. And I say all this to say that after a horrific first year, where I think he might have had like 6 touchdowns to 13 interceptions or something, Trevor Lawrence last year. It was just really, really bad. He's now at least on a trajectory to being a good quarterback in the NFL. And that is massive because these quarterbacks, they take time to develop, right? Tua's finally coming into his own in like year 3. You have a lot of these guys where it takes, year 2, year 3 for them to finally be somebody in the NFL. And what is really exciting about Trevor Lawrence is that rushing upside. I decided to look through all of the quarterbacks and sort them by rushing points per game in fantasy. So I just took their rushing yards, their rushing touchdowns, how many fantasy points per game are you getting on the ground, and then obviously per game. And Trevor Lawrence is in the top 10. He's getting 3.6 points per game or 3.58 points per game on the ground, which is massive. That's 10th in the NFL. It's not Konami code, right? He's never going to be, I would say 5+ is like Konami code. So you have like your Kylers, your Daniel Joneses, your Josh Allens, your Lamar Jackson, Hurts, Fields, all of those guys. I mean, like the elite guys are like 7+. He'll never be in there, but he's at least in a spot where it raises his floor and his ceiling to a spot where he is in that same area as a Russell Wilson, a Mahomes, a Joe Burrow, a Dak Prescott. So that's really good. He is on a good trajectory in real life. He has a really, really strong pedigree where he's one of the best prospects we've ever seen. And I don't think that was overblown at the time at all. I think it was completely justified. The guy came out there, best high school recruit of all time per ESPN since like Vince Young, balls out his freshman year at Clemson, goes first overall. He has been what he has been promised, or he was a really strong prospect regardless of what the result has been. He has the rushing upside as we see here. The Jaguars continue to invest in pieces around him. They went out and spent on Christian Kirk, which I don't even love Christian Kirk, but it's nice to see them at least trying, right? So they go out and they buy Christian Kirk. Bigger news is that they go out and they trade for Calvin Ridley, so that'll be huge next year when Calvin Ridley comes into town. It's all perfect. And I would have him now as like just outside of that elite tier of quarterbacks. So obviously outside of those top 6, like Lamar, Burrow, Mahomes, all of those guys. But I think we're going to look back at the season and see what Trevor Lawrence did on the ground, see what he did through the air. Take into account that his number 1 receiver was just Christian Kirk, just his second year after a really horrific first year. And he's going to be on the trajectory where I think that he's going to be seen as like a late 1, early 2 in Dynasty startup drafts. You can make the case to take him at like 110, 111, 112, just with how expensive and valuable quarterbacks are in the format. So if I'm a rebuilder, I would go out, see if I could buy him. I mean, it's not going to be for cheap, but I think that you could buy him right now for reasonable prices. These are some trades that I pulled up from a Daco's trade tool on Google Drive. I'll make sure to send put a link in the description or a link in the comments of it. Here are some nice trades that have actually happened in the month of November. First, I would do this all day. This is a 23 first and a 23 fifth for Trevor Lawrence. I would give any first that's like valued outside of the top 3 picks for Trevor Lawrence pretty easily. If I could send a Javonte Williams, a DeAndre Swift, a Dameon Pierce, something in that area for Trevor Lawrence all day long, like any of those running backs from like running back like 6 through 10, I would do that all day. And I think that if you could tier up this bottom one, right, so Deontay Pickett in a third, for Trevor Lawrence in a second, which is crazy to me. But if you could go out there and, move off of a Pickett, a Geno, a Mac Jones, add like a piece or two to them, and tier up to a Trevor Lawrence, please go do that. Now, let's get to our second buy. I feel like we've sort of been gushing about Trevor Lawrence here, but he's somebody that I've really came around on. I wasn't really that into him prior to the season just because, terrible first year. Jaguars are rough. I think that there were just better things to buy in his price range, but I think right now is a nice opportunity to buy him at the deadline. Our second one's a little bit more like boring, I guess, but we have James Conner. The first one was for rebuilders. This one's for contenders. This is if you are out here and you have a 0 RB or a hero RB dynasty team and you're gearing up for the playoffs, you're gearing up for a championship run, and you just need running back scoring. I don't think that there is a cheaper like pound for pound option than James Conner. In my rankings, he's my 8-11 and RB24 in Dynasty. Keep Trade Cut has him at 1205 as the RB36. So that's 12 running back spots in like 4 rounds of value on James Conner. And I think a really good way to sort of visualize that is I took my top 20 running back rest of season rankings, so like my top 19, my first 5 tiers essentially. And I so rank is where I have them ranked rest of season. KTC rank is where they're ranked in Keep Trade Cut among running backs. And then the difference there, right? So the guys who are red are bad values for contending teams. Those are more, rebuilding type assets like a Kenneth Walker, right? He's the RB1 on Keep Trade Cut, but the RB7 rest of season, so he's not a great value. And you go down and you see James Conner and you get 19 spots of value. He is the RB35 in Keep Trade Cut. He's my RB16 rest of season. You are getting a high-end, like RB2, fringe RB1 that can produce with the likes of, Aaron Joneses of the world, the Leonard Fournettes of the world, even, sort of creep up there into the Nick Chubb, Josh Jacobs range. And you can buy him for a fraction of the sexier running backs. He's going to see bell cow usage. They cut Eno Benjamin. He saw 90% plus of the snaps, the touches, everything last week. He is going to be locked in to the juicy James Conner role that he had last season. So, again, RB35 prices. You can buy him for literally cheaper than a 2023 second. This is him next to a 23 second on Keep Trade Cut. He's cheaper. You could probably do like your second for James Conner in a third, maybe a late second, maybe a 24 second. Maybe don't even use draft capital at all and try and just sort of move, I'm not going to call it fodder, but just like pieces that you don't really care about, move them for James Conner. Maybe could you do Terrace Marshall in a third for James Conner? Would that work? I don't know, something like that. Or if I could do maybe like Nico Collins for James Conner straight up, something in that area where, players that aren't making into your lineup to get James Conner, I think would be the move. Now, our last trade target here, Drake London. He is my 208 as my wide receiver 8 in Dynasty. On Keep Trade Cut, he's the 404 as the wide receiver 15. And I think this is the perfect time to buy Drake London. People are souring hard on this Falcons offense. Drake London is at, through 10 games, just 38 catches, 407 yards, and 3 touchdowns, which is not great. It's like 3 to 4 catches per game, like 40 yards per game. For rookie wide receiver, you want a lot more than that. The raw numbers don't look great at all. But for me, he's my wide receiver 8 and number 1 rookie wide receiver because the raw stats are misleading in this Arthur Smith-led offense where it's slow, it's anemic, they run the ball. Mariota can't hit his receivers. I think like 25% of like Kyle Pitts' targets have been uncatchable. It's been a really, really tough spot. But when we look at what he's done on the field, he's been great on a market share, on a per route basis. It's all there. He is at a 27% target share, which is a big boy target share. He's at 79.8 PFF grade. That's elite. 27% target share. When we compare that to guys like CeeDee Lamb didn't even crack 20% in his first year. I think T. Higgins was like a 21% guy. I think if you look back at like Jalen Waddle, he was at like 24% last year, which is really, really good for a rookie. Drake London is demanding targets, and his PFF grade is really strong. Now it's like, Ron, who cares about PFF grade? PFF grade is really predictive. The guys who have 80 plus PFF grades or like 75 plus PFF grades in year 1, usually end up doing great things in the NFL. I think like the complete list of guys with like 80 plus is like Mike Evans, Jamar Chase, Jefferson, OBJ, Godwin, Antonio Brown, Tyreek Hill. Literally just a who's who of hits in the NFL. And I decided to look at players with a 75 or better PFF grade, were drafted top 10, and had a 24% or better target share in year one. And this is the list. My goodness. Hold up. All right, I'm back. But he's an elite company in terms of just his PFF grade, his target share, where he was drafted. It's all panning out. I wouldn't really hold against the idea of him being in a bad environment against Drake London. It's early on in his career. We really are just looking for talent at this point. He was the wide receiver one in this class. He was drafted top 10. He's been nothing but a stud every time he's been on the field, just in terms of him individually. It really wouldn't shock me if, like, in a year from now, Drake London was the consensus wide receiver 3 in Dynasty after Jefferson and Chase. I do think he was on that trajectory through like the first 3 weeks. People have cooled off because the Falcons have been running the ball a ton, but I'm just going to buy the talent. We play the long game. He's 21 years old. Regardless of, even if you think that I'm being outrageous with the wide receiver 3 thing, he's at wide receiver 15 prices, which is insane. Again, this early in a wide receiver's career, I just want to chase talent. Now, when we talk about trade ideas, here's some actual trades that have happened over the past couple weeks. And the first one is swapping Jameson Williams and change for London. I know it's London in a third for Jameson Williams in a second, which is crazy, but we're not going to say that can actually happen. But maybe you could do London in a second for Jameson Williams in a third. Maybe you could do the same thing with like London and George Pickens, or London and like Treylon Burks. Any of those guys in that area. If I could do, I think a good one right now, if you could figure out a way to do like, if you could do like Christian Watson in like a second for Drake London, I think I would do that all day long. Second one, Cooper Kupp is hurt, but if you are a pretender who is trying to contend, if you want to cash out of your Devontae Adams, your Cooper Kupp, your Stephon Diggs, your Tyreek Hill to go and get Sky Moore, or to go and get Drake London plus, I think you have to do that. You can cash out on a guy like Dameon Pierce or Ramondre Stevenson, 2 day 3 running backs for Drake London. I would do that all day. I would even sell like aging running backs like Chubb, Eckler, Mixon for London. I think you could do that. This Brian Robinson one on the bottom is just absolutely hilarious. I don't think that that's actually going to happen in your league, but I showed it just because maybe. I'm telling you guys, people want to see points from these players. People are going to be souring on Drake London, even though he's done everything individually as best as he could in the situation that he's been placed in. Now, when we flip over to the other side and we talk about ourselves here, this is going to be one that you guys really do not like. But we're going to be talking about Tua here. And I will say, I made these last weekend. I think I would bump him a little bit higher than where I have him here. I have him at 402 as my QB 13. Maybe I'd be more open to like early third, like QB 11-ish area. But Keep Trade Cut has him at the 202 as the QB 8. Fellas, this is big boy territory. 202 as the QB 8 means that you are holding a lot of value by having this player on your team. And don't get me wrong, he has been great this season. He has been averaging 20 points per game as the QB7 this year. He has 18 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. He leads the league in all major stats, QBR, adjusted yards per attempt, pass grade, EPA per play, all of that. So what's the issue? And I think where it starts for me is I think his doing in a lot of those stats are overrated. He has Tyreek Hill. He has Jalen Waddle. They are both top 5 in receiving grade on PFF, top 3 in yards per out run, top 5 in yards, top 5 in fantasy points. Everything. He has essentially 2 top 5 wide receivers on his team, and depending on what you like between Tyreek Hill and Justin Jefferson, he has the best wide receiver in football as well. So I have a tough time moving Tua all the way up to big boy territory at that 1-2 turn when he's propelled by his weapons in the short term, and he's not really giving you true difference-making production with those weapons, right? So this is Dynasty. We have these players for life, and when Tua's value is being propped up by factors outside of Tua being extremely talented, like Tyreek Hill, like Waddle, like Mike McDaniel calling plays, I have trouble buying in at a price like this. Again, this is the 202 is the QB8. This is a really big boy price tag here that you are holding the bag on your team. And I think it is probably the wrong move to just let that value sit on your team and not capitalize at this point. Because even with those crazy stats, Top 5 wide receivers. He has been just the QB7 with 20 points per game. And 20 points per game is good, or it's even great this year, but that's because quarterback scoring has been down. This feels very Kirk Cousins-esque. Kirk Cousins was at 20 points per game in 2020, a year where quarterback scoring was better, and he was just the QB 11 in points per game. Again, I think he's really shining this year just because of how down quarterback scoring has been across the board. 20 points per game in a normal year is usually like just flirting with top 12 numbers. And it feels like this is kind of his ceiling. And the biggest turnoff for me with Tua is the rushing upside. He is essentially a statue. If we look at that same chart from earlier with Trevor Lawrence and we scroll down to Tua, Trevor Lawrence is getting about like 3.5 points per game from rushing. Tua is getting 0.5 points per game. And I removed the game that he got pulled out of against the Bengals. He has just 35 rushing yards, 0 rushing touchdowns. He is giving you 5 rushing yards per game. That is all he is giving you on the ground. That puts him here in the same bucket as guys like Andy Dalton, Derek Carr, Matthew Stafford, Jameis Winston, just guys who aren't mobile, are, just like fringe QB1s in fantasy. You even had a guy like Matthew Stafford last year have a, not an MVP season, but he had 41 passing touchdowns, and he was still just the quarterback 11 in points per game with 20 points per game. That's what we're going to see with Tua. That is, to me, his ceiling. If he can't run the ball, which it shows that he can't, you're going to need like MVP, world-beating 50 touchdown season for him to ever truly make a difference in your lineup. So I would just bet against him ever having one of those seasons. And if it is, then it's not going to be every season. It's going to be like once in a blue moon. Now, I want to be straight up with you guys. I'm not saying go sell him for a bag of chips. I can't stress this enough. I know a lot of you guys are not going to be happy that I'm saying sell Tua. I'm not saying that you have to sell Tua. But I think that there is an opportunity here where you can cash out and buy one of the blue chip stocks at quarterback. Where if we look at some trades that have been happening here in November, these are pretty damn wild. Is this not it right here? Hold up. All right, here they are. And as you guys can see, you can use Tua to get into those elite quarterbacks. You can see here, Tua plus Chubb and Bridgewater get you to Lamar Jackson and a 24 first. Second one is Tua, Deontay Johnson, and 24 first for Josh Allen. I would do that all day. Tua, 2 seconds, and a 24 first for Patrick Mahomes. I would do that all day. If you can move Tua to get into the elites, if you can move him to get into Mahomes, Lamar, Josh Allen, Hurts, Burrow, Herbert, I would do it all day. I don't think you can do it in every league. I think if you're in a sharp league, you probably won't be able to. But you might be able to go out there and do something like Tua. You might be able to do something like Tua in a second for Justin Fields in a first, and I would jump all over that if that's on the table. Again, I just think the ceiling isn't there. Now, I'm not saying sell Tua for, a bag of chips or anything, but if you can use Tua to tier up into the elite tier of quarterbacks, I think you should do that. They're much more stable assets. They all present a lot more upside, all of the quarterbacks listed here. So that is what I would be doing if I had any Tua shares. Now, our last sell here is another fan favorite, Dameon Pierce. He is my 607 as my RB17. On Keep Trade Cut, he is the 312 as the RB9. This is just what it is. Day 3 running backs are not good news. They are not good to hold on to. Teams show no allegiances to these guys. We saw it with Elijah Mitchell. They go out and they trade for McCaffrey. We saw it with James Robinson. They go out there, they draft Travis Etienne, and they kick his ass to the curb in like 3 years. Alfred Morris had the 1 year where he popped with Robert Griffin. Never heard from him again. We saw Michael Carter. He gets usurped by Breece Hall literally immediately, and they don't even trust him to the point where they don't then bring in James Robinson afterwards. Day 3 running backs, they just don't get, or day 3 running backs, undrafted free agent running backs, just don't really get that respect. Now, a lot of people want to say, but Dameon Pierce is a round 4 guy. He's not even really day 3. I cannot stress this enough, guys. People love to talk themselves into like round 4 being comparable to round 3. It's just not the case. This is from when I looked through my database. I pretty much found the points per game from each player through the first 3 seasons, and I bucketed them first round, second round, third round, fourth round, fifth round, sixth round, seventh round. And as you guys can see, the clear tier breaks are from round 1 to round 2, from round 3 to round 4. So there's a big tier break. 9.11 points per game through the first 3 seasons for round 3 running backs, only 5.58 for round 4. As you can see, round 5 is literally identical, 5.53, and then there's another tier break to round 6 and round 7. So it's this idea out there, or there is an idea out there, and it doesn't really hold a lot of weight, that like round 4 isn't that bad and it's like kind of comparable to round 3. It's not. Day 3 is day 3, and if you want to say 4 or 5 is different from 6 and 7, I guess you can say that, but it's marginal. So if there's ever a spot where you can cash out of a day 3 running back, just knowing how much worse of a career that they usually have, you probably should, especially at RB9 prices in Dynasty. And even if Dameon Pierce hits the nuts and he's Aaron Jones, I'm not sure Aaron Jones at any stretch in his career has ever been valued much higher than the RB9 in Dynasty. I don't think that there's ever been a time where Aaron Jones is like a top 5 Dynasty running back. So I think when you can cash out, you probably should. This is him compared to every single day 3 running back in my database, points per game and target share. And the names aren't great. It's Alfred Morris, it's Jordan Howard, it's Elijah Mitchell. Then you start getting into Zach Stacy, Carlos Williams, Roy Helu. Even if he is Alfred Morris, Jordan Howard, Elijah Mitchell, it's like, what are you going to get there? You're going to get, maybe he finishes top 12 eventually. I don't think he'll finish top 12 this year. Maybe you get a top 12 finish out of him. None of these guys have multiple top 12 finishes. Usually you get a top 24 finish in year 1. Maybe you get top 12 in year 2. It's just rough. I think that this is a spot where you see now you can sell him at RB9 prices, and you look back when he's valued at like RB20 or RB19, and you regretted not making that move. This is a Texans team that he is on. People want to say, oh, but they love him and he's going to be, amazing. He'll be the next Arian Foster. This is a Texans team that is projected to have the first overall pick right now. Who knows how long the Lovie Smith regime is going to be there? Who knows how long that GM or front office is going to be in there? There's so many moving parts here that I think you can and you should just cash out at RB9 prices. I really don't know how much higher you're expecting this Dameon Pierce to go. And again, he's only giving you 14.9 points per game. So it's not like this like crazy difference-making production. Like, you could make the case that James Conner outscores him the rest of the way, and that's not really that crazy to say. So when we're talking about what we should be cashing out for, I would cash out for any 23 first that's mid or better, like middle of the first. I would cash out for any 24 first, like with a plus on top. I would want a little bit on top of a 24 first. I like the idea of cashing out for an underperforming running back. This is Jonathan Taylor from, the 9th or whatever, but I think you could get into your, you could get into maybe like a Breece Hall who's like hurt. You could get into one of those top guys, like maybe probably not a Swift or you could probably get into a Swift. You could maybe get into maybe add a piece to Pierce. You get into Kenneth Walker, you get into ETN, one of those guys. I would sort of try to tier up. Maybe, like, can you add a second to Dameon Pierce and get into the Travis Etienne, Kenneth Walker conversation, or the, McCaffrey, JT, Saquon conversation? I think possibly. I think you can also get into the London, Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave area. I would do the exact same. Same thing if Amon-Ra St. Brown is in that area too. I'd be very much into that as well. A.J. Brown as well. Anything like that. I would want to move off of him to get into that elite asset tier, maybe bundle him with something. But I think if you can sell him at RB9 prices, you probably should. Now, that is going to do it for us today. I hope everybody out there that's been fiending for Dynasty content, that is what you were looking for. Again, if you want access to my complete Dynasty rankings, I update them every single month, even in season. You can sign up on patreon.com/Ron Stewart. The link will be down below in the description, down below in the comments below. Put a lot of time and effort into them. I think actually this weekend or tomorrow, I have plans to go out there and update my prospect database for the 2023 class. So if you're sort of like curious what the 23 class looks like, I'll be doing an update on there where I go through my RS grades and kind of write out a little review of what's kind of happened this season in college. So you get all that on the Patreon. On top of that, you get my seasonal stuff. So you get my season rankings, my weekly rankings, my rest of season rankings, waiver wire article, all that good stuff. I give out too much on there, but it is what it is. As always, if you can't contribute on there, liking the video, subscribing helps the boy out a ton. As always, I will see you guys in the next one.
I got the juice, I got the juice.
Channel, Chatham's on. Foolies glad I'm home. Even my haters kinda glad I'm on. Rest in peace to my vagabond. Rapper, song, singer, suspended, subpoena from Mr.